Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trek Canon. Yes, Cannonites, we are back to doing Star Trek, but today, I'm going to do a video also on season 3, episode 1 of Star Trek Picard, which will probably land sometime today as well. Ain't no probably, it will be sometime today as well. But what I wanted to do was talk about one of the best episodes of New Trek I've seen, and that was surprisingly from Star Trek Prodigy. Now, here's the thing. This episode was from season 1, episode 13, and it was called All the World's a Stage. Now, the synopsis, and it's going to be spoilers in this episode, but the short of it is basically the protostar receives a distress signal from this planet. When they get to the planet and beam down, they find out that it's a civilization that met Starfleet before, but because of who they met, and I'm gonna get into that later, because of who they met and from the crew of who they met, um, they adhered to the Federation Prime Directive, but stayed away from the technological advances. So basically, you have a civilization that models themselves after Starfleet's principles, but not nearly as technologically advanced as anything that you would normally see in Starfleet or period. Now, the thing about this episode is that we find out that, and there's a lot of Easter eggs in this episode, but we find out that through Lieutenant Garivik or Ensign Garivik, but for people who don't know Garivik is two Gariviks in Star Trek canon, all right? One served with Captain Kirk when he was Lieutenant Kirk, and he was killed from this entity, right? And his son, which served under Kirk for the episode Obsession from the original series. All right, he was a red shirt, and I was thinking to myself when I got into the episode and when we got to see the cliffhanger, well, not the cliffhanger, but the climax at the end, and we got to meet the gallows, which is the monster of the forest of the caves, right? I was just blown away by the connections that they made and the connection of who they made it to being such a small character, in the overall scheme of Star Trek, only like I said, being noted in 1 or 2 episodes. Now, what made this episode my favorite New Trek episode is this. Now, I know that you guys seen a quote at the beginning of this episode. You don't need a starship, to believe. You know what I'm saying? You don't need a starship to believe. And that's something that I've always held true to. People who've watched my channel, people who've seen why I am a Trekkie videos and stuff like that would know that although I don't fly around in starships and don't have warp drive and, tricorders and all of these things, there are tenets of Starfleet that I believe would make a utopia on Earth if people actually believed. You know what I mean? So to see an episode like this, where you see a civilization of people who have their patchwork uniforms, who put on a play all of the time, in memoriam of Garivik and of Starfleet and of what Starfleet represents. The thing is, and it was really cool how they did it because Garivik, of course, as he stayed with these people, told them stories of his crewmates, of his ship, of Starfleet, and everything like that. And you could see that he has such admiration and respect for these his crewmates that it their names and mannerisms and even speech patterns passed down through generations on this planet. James T, the way he spoke with Kirk's, rhythms, he says, yeah, Spock, he it was great. Suhu, all of Bones, the people, everybody that they had in this episode, who was it? Scotty, the engineer Scotty, he even had the same thing. So it was really cool how they not only paid homage to the original series and to the characters of the original series and to what Starfleet represents. It's not always the blowing up and everything, but it is the principle of what they say, boldly going. So I like they live logs and properly. Even though their sayings and everything over time had degraded and morphed a bit from what the original was supposed to be from the stories that Garrick said, the tenets of them still held true. And I loved that about this episode. It was we got to meet an exciting new race. You know what I mean? We got to have a mystery, an old style original series mystery, something that's going on with this civilization, and we got to figure it out. It's we racing against the clock because it's some kind of sickness or ailment or some type of sacrifices and to Vol or something that's going on. But we have to try to get the things on the right track, like the mob, what was that episode? With the mob where the prime directive interfered with them. You know, that and with the way Kirk had to go in and solve that and keep them redirect their values of Starfleet. But this civilization, we explored new worlds and new civilizations. We talked about the optimism of Star Trek and of Starflight. You know what I mean? It was a very Star Trek episode. The ending was awesome. I would totally see, New Enterprise, the city of New Enterprise shaped like an Enterprise ship, and to have the Galileo. The Galileo has been everywhere. That shuttlecraft has been everywhere, and it is by far the most famous shuttlecraft. You know what I mean? So to have that offshoot, that touch, in Prodigy was great. And I'm gonna have to say, overall, Prodigy, the story that they told was really good. At first I was a little, where they going with this? What's, what, what are they trying to do? What story are they trying to tell? But the story that they told was touching. It was beautiful overall. Prodigy was a great series. I highly recommend it to Trekkies. I know some of you guys might be like, but believe me when I say it turned out really nice and I really liked it. And this episode in particular was just by far a great episode of all the new Trek to me. And stay tuned for the season 3, episode 1 review of the next generation of Picard. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for sticking with me. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And as always, peace, recycle, and say the whales. You guys be cool.
Yeah.